Probably the most popular tripod of all time is the Sackler Flowtech, which was a fast deploying tripod where you didn't have to do each individual leg, but instead we're able to just lift a latch at the top of the tripod and have all legs deploy very quickly. This was great, especially for documentary filmmakers, because of how quick it was to not only deploy your tripod, but also level it in different scenarios. But it is also $2,500. But because that tripod is so expensive, a lot of us need to look for alternatives, and that's what I have for you today. 3 very fast deploying tripods, all under $1,000, the poor man's Flowtech 75 competition. So the 3 tripods we have to test out today are the Manfrotto ONE from Manfrotto, the YC Onion Pineta Peak, and then the Smallrig Tribex. And all 3 of these tripods have very similar fast deploying mechanisms like the Flowtech, and that's why we're testing them out today. So we're going to test them out on speed of deployment, but also the ease of leveling each one once you have your required height, and then also build and durability, stability when you're actually shooting with long lenses, because some of these are very light, and so that could be an issue for some of those. So let's go through each tripod and see which one is the winner. So a quick overview of each tripod that we're talking about today. This is the YC Onion Pineta Peak. I have a full review on this tripod and I've owned it for over 3 years. It is about 7 to 8 pounds with the legs only, and depending on what head you get, that will obviously go up. And this is the cedar head from YC Onion that I highly recommend if you do use these tripods, or really any other tripod, because the head is so nice, has lots of different counterbalance settings, and also has some really nice fluid motions when you're doing pans and tilts. And so the whole package together, if you get the cedar head, is definitely the heaviest of the 3 tripods, but that means the durability is also really outstanding. This tripod has been very durable. It feels like it's made with really nice materials and is a very strong tripod. Now, the best part about the YC Onion is the fact that it functions almost exactly as the Flowtech, which is it has these latches at the top of the legs, and then as you release those, then you can release the legs. So if you release all 3, then it's really easy to get it up and down and get it to your desired height. Now, the tripod legs are rated for a very heavy payload, like up to 30 pounds. But if you're using the head or a center shaft column, it's actually gonna be closer to 17 pounds or 20 pounds. But I've had fully rigged out Alexa Minis on this, as well as fully rigged out C300s, and the tripod has done just fine. So the payload is definitely pretty darn strong on this tripod. All right, next up is the Smallrig Tribex tripod. And this one functions a little different. It's a fast deploying tripod, but it only has a single mechanism. So it's a hydraulic system. And so when you squeeze this, the tripods come all the way out, all 3 legs at the same time. So it's a little faster to deploy all 3, but it doesn't have the individual latches, which could pose some problems, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then it comes with a pretty nice tripod head. I lost this piece on the front, so just ignore that. Really smooth pans and tilts. It also has some counterbalance as well, so you can dial it in based on the weight of your rig. Speaking of, the payload of this rig is about 13 to 17 pounds with this specific head that comes with the Tribex, but the legs obviously can take a little bit more, just depends on what your setup is. Now, the tripod itself is also the lightest of the 3 by a pretty wide margin. I think the legs alone are only about 6 pounds. With the head, the entire thing is just over 8 pounds, and so probably at least 2 pounds lighter than the YC Onion and a little bit lighter than the Manfrotto ONE. Now, all 3 of the tripods are made with carbon fiber like the Flowtech, but some of them don't feel as robust as the others. So the YC Onion, which is by far I think the best built, has much thicker legs and feels more stable, where the Tribex feels a little plasticky, especially for carbon fiber. And finally, we have the Manfrotto ONE, which is the newest of the 3 tripods. Like the YC Onion and the Flowtech, it has a single mechanism for each individual leg. The only difference is it's halfway down the leg when it's fully deployed like this. And so if you do want to actually deploy it, you have to lift those up and then reach down to lock those down, or loosen them when you have to compress your tripod. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that a little bit later on in this video. Otherwise, like the other ones, carbon fiber, it seems like it's well built, definitely feels a little bit cheaper than the YC Onion or the Flowtech, but a little bit nicer than the Smallrig Tribex. So this tripod is almost the exact same weight as the Smallrig Tribex. It feels a little bit more robust. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit heavier, but the legs and the head together weighted at just over 8 pounds. And the payload is a little bit less when you have all these different components together. The head only has a payload capacity of about 11 pounds, which isn't that great. But again, I have ran a C400 with a V-mount battery, a large lens on it, and the tripod has done just fine. But the legs have a payload capacity that is closer to the Smallrig, so you can probably have a payload of up to 20 pounds on the legs alone. So if you update the head, then you might be able to have a little bit more payload on the whole system altogether. Now, there are a lot of things that make a great tripod, like build quality and stability, but this is a poor man's Flowtech video, and so what matters most to me is speed of deployment and speed of leveling. And so let's go ahead and I will deploy each one of these tripods and see which one is actually the fastest to get to its full height. So first is the Manfrotto ONE. So like the Flowtech, the Manfrotto ONE can get to its full height pretty darn quickly. And as you can see, it's about eye level. I'm about 5'10", and so that's about how high the tripod can get. It looks like it's about 5.5 feet. But it does have a center column, so if you wanted to lift that up and get even higher, you can do that and get a little bit higher on your tripod. So one other great thing about tripods like the Flowtech and all the ones we're testing out today is that it not only can be deployed very quickly, but once you have your tripod at full height, then it's very easy to level them based on just using the latches on the legs. And so as you can see, I'm on uneven ground, so my tripod is a little bit tipsy. And so I can just unlatch one leg and just move just a little bit to get that tripod level so you get nice, even horizons. And while I prefer the YC Onion, the Flowtech that has the latches up here, just because it keeps things a little bit tighter, you do have to reach for the Manfrotto latches a little bit further and snap those down in order to change the level of your tripod. Now this test also shows a couple of my annoyances with the Manfrotto ONE. The first is that the latches are pretty loud. So if you're doing it quickly, you're gonna hear that snap. Now if you do it really gently, you can do it pretty quietly. But when you're trying to do something very quickly and move around and you're shooting a documentary situation, it's not great to have that loud of a snap while you're actually trying to film something and capture good, clean audio. Now, my second annoyance with this system is that if you are shooting a little bit lower, like right now my tripod is just about waist level, and I am looking at my level and I want to make a small adjustment with my legs, then if you have the YC Onion or the Flowtech, your hands can be right here, right where they fall naturally. But with the Manfrotto ONE, because the latches are down low, then you're doing a lot more reaching to actually get that level, which takes your eyes off your camera, which makes it harder to see if you actually are level based on the level on your camera. And then that snap. But one thing that the Manfrotto ONE does really well is get very low to the ground. It has this center column that just has a quick release snap in and snap out below your actual tripod head. And so it's really easy to take that out, stick it in your bag, stick it in your pocket. And then it has some really nice mechanisms for actually getting your tripod low. It's just a single pull down on each leg, and then the tripod can get really, really low. I mean, this thing is just a few inches off the ground, and so it's really easy to get low, stable shots with the Manfrotto ONE. Next up is the YC Onion Pineta Peak, and just like the Flowtech, it has these latches at the top of the tripod. So let's deploy this tripod to its full height. So as you can see, very quick to deploy this tripod to its max height, and also apparent this is quite a bit higher than the Manfrotto ONE, so it's at least another 8 inches above where the Manfrotto ONE ended up. And then when you do want to re-level your tripod based on just the latches on the legs, it's really easy to do that because it's right where your hands are going to rest naturally anyway. And so that is a huge point for the YC Onion. And just to contrast with the Manfrotto ONE, when I do want to level this tripod, when it's a little bit lower like this, it is much easier to do so because my hands are right here. I'm not reaching down, losing sight of what I'm filming, and can easily just re-level in very small increments and still have my eyes on my screen. So this tripod, like the Flowtech, is a 75mm bowl, and so it does not have a center column. I'm sure you can buy a tripod head or tripod head system that has a center column if you'd like that, but that does mean it's pretty darn easy to get low to the ground. And it just has a single latch that pops out and allows you to put the legs all the way out. And just like the Manfrotto ONE, it can get pretty darn low. This tripod head's a little bit bigger and a little bit taller because it is more robust, and so it's gonna be a little higher off the ground than the Manfrotto ONE would be, but you can still get the actual tripod legs very, very low to the ground. And then finally, we have the Smallrig Tribex. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it has a different mechanism than the Manfrotto ONE or the YC Onion, and that it has a single clutch hydraulic system where you just pull this in and then that deploys the legs. So when your tripod is at this height, you wanna get to full height, you just hold that down and it slides out and you're at full height. As you can see, it's a little bit shorter than both the Manfrotto ONE and the YC Onion. YC Onion is quite a bit taller. And so when it's at its full height, it is not as tall, but is at about 5 feet when it's totally maxed out. But like the Manfrotto ONE, the Smallrig also comes with a center column I took mine out for travel and forgot where I put it. And so if you do need to get this a little bit higher, you can get it up to about the height of the YC Onion with that center column. But you're going to sacrifice some stability doing that. One other thing I've noticed is that the hydraulic system and this little clutch right here tends to be a little bit delayed. So if I just did this and then released it, you might have that situation where one of the legs still has the hydraulic system. And so you really need to pop out this clutch and handle every time you want to make sure that it doesn't collapse on you. So for example, I want to re-level, I let go, it readjusts itself. So instead, when you do want to re-level this tripod, you hold it, you adjust, and then before you do anything, you push that handle out so that it stays. Pretty annoying. Like all the other tripods, the Tribex does have a low mode where again, you just pop out a little mechanism here that frees up the legs to go a little bit further out. And then once you do that on each leg, you can stick it all the way to the ground and gets just as low as any of the other tripods that we've tested. And you can get some great low shots this way. All right, next up, we're going to do a stability test. And while this isn't the perfect setup if you're going to be shooting at 400 millimeters, because I have a 7200 with a 2X adapter on there. And so we're at 400 millimeters. And if I was going to shoot with something like this, I'd probably use something like a C400 just to get a little bit more of the weight in the back, or put the tripod plate on the actual lens itself. But I think this will give us a pretty good idea of when you're actually operating the camera, how much movement there is in the head. Something you may not see at 24 millimeters or 35 or 50 millimeters, but at 400 millimeters, every little adjustment is probably going to introduce some shake on our character Elliot, who's standing out there. So we're just gonna push record and we'll see how quickly the tripod settles. And then also when I'm turning my focus peaking on and off or changing any settings, just how much that actually shakes your image. This is the Manfrotto ONE tripod. Now pushing peaking. And then this is me adjusting the focus. So I'm gonna adjust from far to near and back again. And let's go ahead and zoom out to 400 or 100. And then this is the Manfrotto ONE without touching anything, just letting the tripod rest. This is also with image stabilization off on the 70-200. Next up is the Smallrig Tribex. So if we push record, now we let the camera settle. And this is at 400 millimeters. Turning my focus peaking on. Now I'm gonna pull focus. Here, I'm doing this as gently as I can. Back to our subject. And then zooming out to 70 millimeters. That was rough. All right, next up is the YC Onion Pineta Peak. And again, we're at 400 millimeters, and this is the camera just resting. And now I'm pushing my focus peaking buttons. And off again. And now I'm going to try to manually pull focus. And then zoom out to 70, so 140. And pull focus again. And I think it's fairly obvious right here that this is by far the most stable of the three, and especially a lot better than the Smallrig. And then one last time on the YC Onion, I'm just gonna start pushing some buttons up top just to show. So even when I'm pushing my peaking on and off like I am now, if there is any movement in the image, it's very minimal, where when you saw on the Smallrig especially, but also the Manfrotto, there was a lot more shake introduced into the entire camera system. And again, I do want to emphasize that this is a user error bad way to shoot 400 millimeters. You definitely either want to put the tripod plate on the lens itself to stabilize the lens, or use a bigger camera body so that therefore you have a more stable platform for the lens to hang off on. But I do think it shows pretty well just how much jitter and shake there are in just small movements when you're using the different tripod systems. So with that test, it's pretty clear that the YC Onion Pineta Peak is by far the most stable of these different tripods, which is no surprise because it is heavier, it's got a bigger payload, it's got a better head on it already, and so the whole system is just more robust, and therefore that's going to stabilize your footage a lot more than some of the lighter tripods that we have over here to the side. So now my personal opinions on each individual tripod, starting with the Smallrig Tribex. And though I do like the clutch mechanism when I'm fully deploying or compressing my tripod, 90% of the time you're doing smaller adjustments like moving your tripod up a foot or two. And in that case, the clutch mechanism I think is actually quite a bit more difficult than the different individual latches, because you're constantly having to push this handle out to make sure that it's not collapsing in one direction or another. And so it's a little bit annoying for those trying to move quickly, do a lot of tripod shots, but actually get to different heights in a very, very prompt manner. Now I have actually used two different versions of the Smallrig Tribex. This is version number 1, and then what's filming right now is version number 2. And the reason version number 2 is not in the test is because the legs are actually stuck. So after about 3 months of use, I can no longer actually compress my legs down. So they're just sort of stuck. That's another big point against the Smallrig Tribex, is that I just don't think the durability is there for this tripod. That goes with the head as well. I find them to be quite sticky. Oh, there you go. I'm showing you right now. I just want to loosen up this back and forth, and without even tightening it down too much, I'm barely tightening it. If you let it sit there for 10, 15 minutes and come back, it tends to get stuck. And I have jammed my finger more times than I want to count. Now, the one thing I do like is that the head that comes with this tripod is a very nice quick release. It just snaps in, and it has this twisty mount that does not get in the way of small mirrorless cameras or small cinema cameras like the Canon C50. You can easily loosen it and tighten it without it getting jammed up. And then it's very quick to pop out or pop back in and tighten down. So that is the one really nice thing about this tripod head. Now the Manfrotto ONE is the tripod I've had for the least amount of time. I've just been able to test it out for the past month or so, but I am really liking it. It does have some quirks, as I mentioned when you were leveling it. This kind of bending down when you're trying to do the latches is definitely more difficult over the course of a day than having the latches up top. So it's a little bit of a bummer that the latches are down low. But the tripod has a lot of nice things going for it. It's really nicely built. All the mechanisms and buttons are really intuitive and easy to use. It has a quick release mechanism as well that is just a thumb push and a pull, and it pops out. And then you don't even have to twist anything down. You just snap it in and it's locked and ready to go, which is very nice. It has this great little latch right down here, which allows you to actually level the head. So if you wanted to not touch your legs and level the head, then you just loosen that up and latch it back down once you're level. And then if you have a slider or a monopod and you're moving your head from system to system, it has this nice little quick release that you just pop out and the whole head comes off. And so if you have this system installed on something else, then you just snap it back in and it goes right in, which is really, really nice. And no surprise to anyone who has watched this channel for any amount of time, number 1 and my favorite of these types of tripods in this price range is the YC Onion Pineta Peak. I've been using this tripod for over 3 years at this point. I finally sold my Flowtech because this tripod does everything I need and functions just as well as the Flowtech. It's built like a tank. It has a great mechanism. I've never had the legs get sticky or stuck on me, and everything has been very, very fluid. Now, I don't have a lot of annoyances with this tripod because I do think it functions so well, but one small one I do have is that there is this little tab that locks the legs in place. So sometimes you'll open up from the back of your car and pull out your tripod, and you're just like, man, why won't this thing move? It's stuck. It's because you have to pull it out to release it, and then you can deploy it. I'm not really sure what the reason is. I guess for storage, if you wanted to make sure the legs don't go anywhere, that is fairly useful, but I find it more annoying than anything else. But it's a small gripe for an otherwise very great tripod. Now, I think the Manfrotto ONE and the Tribex are really aiming for that content creator or videographer type job, where the YC Onion is really aiming more for that professional cinematographer workflow. It very much is more of a Flowtech competitor than a competitor to the other two tripods we've talked about. And one of those features that it has is not only the 75mm bowl, but also the fact that you can add a mid-level spreader to the different legs if you want even increased stability. Now, pretty amazingly, all of these tripods are actually the exact same price at $800, and that's with the standard heads that come with each one. So these are the standard heads that come with the Smallrig Tribex and the Manfrotto ONE, and then I've upgraded the YC Onion to the cedar head from YC Onion, which is a really nice head. So while I think the YC Onion is a clear-cut winner, both of these tripods are lighter and shorter and easier to travel with. So if you do a ton of travel work and need to throw this into a suitcase and check it, then both of these could be good bets for you. But if you're running heavier setups or just want the best and most stable image, then the YC Onion Pineta Peak is gonna be the best thing you can buy that is not a Flowtech 75. All right, so what do you think? Have you used the Flowtech 75 or one of these 3 tripods? And if so, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe for more videos like this and tips and tricks on documentary and narrative filmmaking. I'll see you in the next video.